plant nutrition and transport. And for further information, you can go to the individual article on vascular plant and nutrient distribution. All right, so let's dive right in. So like all other organisms, plants are primarily made up of water and other molecules containing elements that are essential to life. The absence of specific nutrients or essential elements, many of which have been identified in hydroponic, see the pronunciation here?
Hydroponic.
Yeah, hydroponic experiments can disrupt plant growth and reproduction. And we'll go over hydroponics soon. So an essential nutrient, such as the specific nutrients or essential elements. So an essential nutrient is a nutrient required for normal physiological function that cannot be synthesized in the body either at all or in sufficient quantities, and thus must be obtained from a dietary source. And hydroponics is a type of horticulture and subset of hydroculture, which involves growing plants, usually crops, without soil by using mineral nutrient solutions in an aqueous solvent. And this is very interesting. So you can basically use this setup, this hydroponic setup, by removing some specific nutrients and then seeing how that affects the plant in these controlled experiments and whether they can disrupt plant growth and reproduction. And then you can identify if they're essential and so on. Basically, more control than just the natural growth method. Yeah, especially because you're providing the specific nutrients. In this case, it's in a mineral nutrient solution in an aqueous solvent. A horticulture right here, so it's a type of horticulture and a subset of hydroculture. We'll go over that in a bit, but horticulture is just the art of cultivating plants in gardens to produce food and medicinal ingredients or for comfort and ornamental purposes. So here is some hydroponic setups here. So this is a NASA researcher checking hydroponic onions in the center right here, and then Bib lettuces, let's see how this is pronounced.
Lettuces.
Yeah, lettuces on the left, and then radishes on the right. And yes, you're putting this in basically a mineral nutrient solution in an aqueous solvent. So basically in a liquid solvent there. Now here is another setup. Here is a water plant cultivated crocus. Yeah, let's just pronounce this one.
Crocus.
Yeah, crocus. So so you can see the mineral solution in there. So this is putting the plant directly in the mineral solution. That's hydroponics. But now if you want to look at hydroculture, because remember this is a subset of hydroculture. So basically you're dealing with water and growing it like that. So passive sub-irrigation, also known as passive hydroponics, semi-hydroponics, or hydroculture, is a method wherein plants are grown in an inert, porous medium that transports water and fertilizer to the roots by capillary action from a separate reservoir as needed, reducing labor and providing a constant supply of water to the roots. Yeah, so the description was from Wikipedia, but didn't make that much sense until you actually see the difference. So this is from ambius.blog, and this is horticulture growing plants without soil. So what is hydroculture? So the term hydroponics is familiar to most people. Hydroponics involves growing plants in a liquid growing a medium solution, and hydroponics has become quite popular in recent years, particularly in the growth of vegetables like lettuce and tomatoes. So hydroculture is similar to hydroponics in many ways, but has a key difference. Instead of using a nutrient solution containing water as a growing medium, it uses an inorganic solid medium or inert, inert medium, doesn't react, etc. The inert growing medium is usually rock-based, typically something called expanded clay aggregates. Hydroculture is sometimes called passive hydroponics, meaning the plants grow without soil, bark, or peat moss. And here's an illustration of the difference here. So what you do is, you put it inside this inert setup there, as opposed to just putting that directly in. As opposed to putting the plant directly in the solution, what you have is you put it inside this inert solution, rock-based or clay-based, etc. And then there's the roots connected to this nutrient solution, and there's H2O and there's O2 there. And this is figures from trees.com. So passive hydroponics There's no electricity used, as well as no pumps and wick needed. So what ends up happening is the roots, as they grow and they suck up water using capillary action, just sucks it all up, and then it uses all this water up, all this nutrient solution. Then the water lowers, nutrients lower, and then you got this plant growing. And you're not doing anything, so just passively doing that. So it's very, very interesting. And this is as opposed to just regular hydroponics, where you're actively putting this inside and then have to deal with that scenario. Anyways, continue further. Yeah, and here there's no electricity used, as well as no pumps and wick needed. And the wick is just a string that you could add to it to help absorb water. So this figure is from costofarms.com. So the wick of this product, Wick and Grow trademark TM, is a simple little string inserted in the bottom of the pot that allows plants to drink up water from reservoir in the base of the container. Like a straw, the plant's roots use the wick to take sips of water when the plant is thirsty. So you can put water in there, and then the string will help absorb it, and so on. Alright, so that's very, very interesting. So now let's look at this aquatic plants. Yeah, these aquatic plants, or also water plants, called that. That was to do with this over here's water plant, cultivated crocus, type of water plant there. So aquatic plants or water plants are plants that have adapted to living in aquatic environments, either saltwater or freshwater. And now let's look at this capillary action. So it's sucking this up via capillary action. Yeah, so the capillary action or capillary, let's see the pronunciation here.
Capillary.
Yeah, so capillary action, sometimes capillarity or capillary motion, capillary effect, or wicking, and again the term wick here, where it sucks up the water. Yes, is the process of a liquid flowing in narrow spaces without the assistance of, or even in opposition to, external forces like gravity. The effect can be seen in the drawing up of liquids between the hairs of a paintbrush. It occurs because of intermolecular forces between the liquid and surrounding solid surfaces. If the diameter of the tube is sufficiently small, then the combination of surface tension, which is caused by cohesion within the liquid, and adhesive forces between the liquid and container, act to propel the liquid upwards. Yeah, so it goes upwards, while surface tension keeps the liquid intact. And but however, with some pairs of materials such as mercury and glass, the intermolecular forces within the liquid exceed those between the solid and the liquid, so a convex meniscus forms, and capillary action works in reverse. And the meniscus is this part over here. Yes, and here I just added just a little brief snippet on the meniscus. So the meniscus, let's see the pronunciation here.
Meniscus.
Yeah, so the meniscus, or plural menisci, or menisci.
Menisci.
Or menisci, from the Greek for crescent, after Giacomo. Let's see this one here.
Giacomo
meniscus, 1449 to 1512, a Venetian physician, a Venetian physician and friend of Leonardo da Vinci, is the curve in the upper surface of a liquid close to the surface of the container or another object, caused by surface tension. It could be either concave or convex, depending on the liquid and the surface. So here's A is the bottom of the concave meniscus over here. That's the bottom right here. But here's the top of a convex meniscus, so downwards. Convex, concave. That's very, very interesting setup there. Alright, so now let's take a look at the water versus mercury. So mercury, Hg. So capillary action of water, which is polar, compared to mercury, which is nonpolar, in each case with respect to a polar surface such as glass. And this is this triple bond Si-OH. I believe that's a triple bond, or means 3 valence electrons that could pair up and make 3 covalent bonds, or hence triple bond. Yeah, I haven't seen one that's just by itself like this. Usually they're connected with this. Instead of a double bond, have a triple bond or double bond, etc. But I haven't seen one just free floating like this. And I googled online. They didn't find anything to my liking. There wasn't any info on why this is out here. Anyway, that I could find. during this just a brief search through it. So anyway, so you have H2O, so that's a polar, and then you also have, this is polar, but remember, water is much less light than mercury. And so if you have a tube like this, that's this wide, notice it goes up. If an even thinner one, it can even go up even higher up. So the intermolecular forces, you have attraction in this case, pulling the liquid, and then you have the adhesion of the liquid or the surface tension, keeping it together and just rising upwards. But in this case right here, the adhesion of the mercury or Hg is very strong. So it's very strong together. So that when it gets near a surface, it pulls itself towards itself more than it wants to rise upwards. So it's pulling it inwards relative to this glass, and it's going to go down. And it is much heavier as well. It's more dense than water. That could be a reason. So it's in this case, it has the opposite effect. It just goes downwards, which is quite interesting. So it's a reverse capillary action there. All right, now that we've gone through that, let's talk about intermolecular forces. So we talked about it here. So this is involving intermolecular forces. It occurs because of intermolecular forces between the liquid and surrounding solid surfaces. As you note, so intermolecular forces, or IMF, or secondary forces, are the forces which mediate interaction between molecules, including forces of attraction or repulsion, which act between atoms and other types of neighboring particles, e.g. atoms or ions. Intermolecular forces are weak relative to intramolecular forces, which are the forces which hold a molecule together. For example, the covalent bond involving sharing electron pairs between atoms is much stronger than the forces present between neighboring molecules. Very interesting. All right, so let's continue further. So, the majority of plants are able to obtain these nutrients from solutions that surround their roots in the soil. Continuous leaching and harvesting of crops can deplete or reduce the soil of its nutrients, which can be restored with the use of fertilizers. So in agriculture, leaching is the loss of water-soluble plant nutrients from the soil due to rain and irrigation. And harvesting is the process of gathering a ripe crop from the fields. Yeah, so that's just gathering the crops there. Leaching is a loss of water-soluble plant nutrients. And agriculture is the practice of cultivating or growing plants and livestock, otherwise known as domesticated animals. And irrigation is the artificial process of applying controlled amounts of water to land to assist in the production of crops, but also to grow landscape plants and lawns, where it may be known as watering. So you're just watering it, or irrigation for production of crops. And if you're just watering your plants, that's just watering. And that's just different terminologies. Anyways, a crop is a plant or animal product that can be grown and harvested extensively for profit or substances, or a subsistence. Let's see the pronunciation here.
Subsistence.
Yeah, so subsistence, such as food, clothing, shelter, etc. A fertilizer is from American English, or fertilizer without the Z, there's an S, British English, is any material of natural or synthetic origin that is applied to soil or to plant tissues to supply plant nutrients. Yeah, so basically adding nutrients to the soil or to plant tissues. And it's any material, it could be synthetic or not, etc. Domestication, so here's a domesticated animal. Domestication is a sustained multi-generational relationship in which one group of organisms assumes a significant degree of influence over the reproduction and care of another group to secure a more predictable supply of resources from that second group. The domestication of plants and animals was a major cultural innovation ranked in importance with the conquest of fire, the manufacturing of tools, and the development of verbal language. And you could also look at it more broadly, or more generally, you could think of a domestication of humans. It's pretty much been going on in the world for a long time, and currently is, if you just open your eyes for a bit. All right, continue further. So dogs and sheep were among the first animals to be domesticated, and you could even once you domesticate them both, you could even use the dogs to herd the sheep. It's very, very interesting setup there. Let's make it a bit smaller. And yeah, you can see the sheep, they always grow their wool, and that's used a lot. All right, go further. So a carnivorous plant, or carnivorous, see the pronunciation? Whoops. Okay.
Carnivorous.
Yeah, so a carnivorous plant, carnivorous plants such as Venus flytraps are able to obtain nutrients by digesting arthropods or insects, whereas parasitic plants such as mistletoes can parasitize, see this pronunciation?
Parasitize.
Or parasitize other plants for water and nutrients. It's very interesting. And let's check here. All right, here I quickly just paused the video and added some more notes just to go over this Venus flytrap, and the mistletoe is pretty interesting. So a carnivore, also a carnivore here, or meat eater. It's Latin for caro. Let's see this pronunciation.
Caro.
Yeah, caro, and then in the genitive. Let's see the pronunciation here.
Genitive.
Genitive is carnus, and genitive is just when you're modifying another word, such as carnivore, meaning meat or quote flesh, and vora. Let's see this.
Vorare.
Yeah, vorare, meaning to devour. So basically meat devouring. Is an animal whose food and energy requirements derive solely from animal tissues, mainly muscle, fat, and other soft tissues, whether through hunting or scavenging. And a Venus flytrap is one such plant as well. So it's a plant that also eats meat. It usually just other animals. But yeah, so here's a GIF of a closing trap. So you touch it and it all of a sudden just closes like that. Very interesting. And now here's actually a time-lapse video here. Time-lapse showing Venus flytrap catching prey. So there's a fly over there. If you copy and paste this over here, let's just click here. Oops. So you go here and then you can just scroll down. Oops, there's a typo there. All right, let's just go down. Yeah, so basically, the video is right over here. There's a video time lapse. Let's just click it. So there's a fly, and all of a sudden it gets trapped. And I'm going to speed this up even further. I'll make this 3x speed using my speed controller there, video speed controller. So let's make it even faster. So there's another fly flying around. It's super fast time lapse. And let's just zoom in more. Yeah, there's going to be a fly. There's a fly. Let's see what happens to it. And there's another fly that goes in. And this fly, I think, goes over here eventually. Let's make it slower. Okay. So now it's going to go inside. And bam. And it just gets squished. That's pretty remarkable stuff. So yes, that's very fascinating. Anyways, let's go back over here. All right. So that is the Venus flytrap doing its thing there. Here's the mistletoe. It's a European mistletoe called Viscus album. See the pronunciation?
Viscum album.
Yeah, Viscum album. Attached to a common aspen called a...
Populus tremula.
Yeah, Populus tremula. So this tree. So there's a mistletoe right there acting like a parasite. So it's parasite... It parasitizes other plants for water and nutrients. So it sticks on there and then takes in whatever it's taken in. All right, let's continue further here. So here's a diagram we've seen before. The xylem blue transports water and minerals from the roots upwards, whereas the phloem orange transports carbohydrates between organs. The orange gets carbohydrates, basically photosynthesis products, sugar, etc. And then this goes over between the organs of this plant, all the way down here, up and down, etc. And then water and minerals from in the xylem get transported usually from the roots, going upwards there. Very interesting. All right, let's continue further. So plants need water to conduct photosynthesis, transport solutes between organs. So this solutes is stuff inside the solvents, inside the solutions. Between organs, cool their leaves by evaporation and maintain internal pressures that support their bodies. Water is able to diffuse in and out of plant cells by osmosis. The direction of water movement across a semi-permeable membrane is determined by the water potential across that membrane, or water pressure. MES note, diffusion is the net movement of anything, for example, atoms, ions, molecules, energy, from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration. Diffusion is driven by a gradient or difference in concentration. So if you have a high concentration of a solute inside the solvent here, eventually it will just want to spread out. It will want to diffuse outward. So there's yeah, there's the diffusion over there. Yeah, so basically, let's read this description. So some particles are dissolved in a glass of water. At first, the particles are all near one top corner of the glass. If the particles randomly move around or diffuse in the water, they eventually become distributed randomly and uniformly from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. Let's make this a bit smaller. Yeah. Very, very interesting. Let's continue further. So osmosis is the spontaneous net movement of diffusion of solvent molecules through a selectively permeable membrane from a region of high water potential or potential energy slash pressure, region of lower solute concentration. Yeah, so it has lower solute, but has higher water potential there. So has higher water energy, etc. To a region of low water potential or region of higher solute concentration. So the more solute, less water pressure there is. In the direction that tends to equalize the solute concentrations on the two sides, thus equalizing the water pressure or water potential. So for example here, so the process of osmosis over a semi-permeable membrane, the blue dots represent particles driving the osmotic gradient. Yeah, so essentially it's semi-permeable, so the solute here can't get out, but the water can. So if you have initially here, so you have high water pressure inside here, like that. And this one is low because you have a whole bunch of solute there, so there isn't that much water there. There's not much water. So what's going to happen is the water pressure wants to go inwards until this equalizes the solute concentration. And that is osmosis. Basically, this one here is a low concentration of solutes, high concentration here, but high concentration of water. So you can think about the water is there, but it wants to equalize both the water concentration and the solute concentration, so relative to each other. So what ends up happening is all this water goes up here and you end up a rise in this. So this actually rises upwards until these equalize and look like each other. So basically there's the same concentrations of water and solutes, which is a quite interesting phenomenon. So it's essentially like this high solute concentration is sucking in the water, or the water pressure is pushing it inwards. Very, very interesting. The mechanism of osmosis is not straightforward, but may be due to a lowering of water slash solvent pressure with increased solute. Thus, the solvent moves until the pressure is in equilibrium. So yeah, this is from Wikipedia. It's not straightforward. In other words, the exact reason is still questionable in my view. But this looks like it's the concentration of water is here would be low. This is high, so it looks like it wants to push it in there. It can be viewed as the high concentration of solutes wants to suck in the solvent until it's equalized. Very interesting. All right, so water is able to diffuse across a root cell's membrane through aquaporins. Yeah, let's try pronouncing that.
Through aquaporins.
So yeah, aquaporins, whereas solutes are transported across by the membrane by ion channels and pumps. All right, yeah, so water goes through the aquaporins, and then solutes go through the ion channels and pumps. So aquaporins, also called water channels, are proteins that form pores or small openings in the membrane of biological cells, mainly facilitating transport of water between cells. So essentially like a semi-permeable membrane. Ion channels are pore-forming membrane proteins that allow ions to pass through the channel. Yeah, so essentially different types of, they're all proteins. They're proteins on the membrane. Some of them allow ions, some of them allow water. Interesting. So anyways, in biology, a transporter is a transmembrane protein that moves ions or other small molecules across a biological membrane to accomplish many different biological functions, including cellular communication, maintaining homeostasis, energy production, etc. And active transporters or ion pumps are transporters that convert energy from various sources, including adenosine triphosphate or ATP, sunlight, and other redox reactions, to potential energy by pumping an ion up its concentration gradient. So to move this energy slash ion and other materials of this, or other products. So for example, sunlight, you pump in a bunch of ions resulting from this sunlight. And then once you have a concentration of ions, then you could utilize that for other mechanisms. So that acts as potential energy storage. So a transmembrane protein, TP, is a type of integral membrane protein that spans the entirety of a cell membrane, or of the cell membrane. An integral membrane protein, IMP, is a type of membrane protein that is permanently attached to the biological membrane. All transmembrane proteins are IMPs, but not all IMPs are transmembrane proteins. Yeah, so basically all of these are this IMPs, so they're always permanently attached to the biological membrane, but there's some that don't span the entire cell membrane. So yes, again, just more terminology. Yeah, so most of life is just terminology. In vascular plants, water and solutes are able to enter the xylem, a vascular tissue or conducting tissue, by the way of an apoplast, and symplast. See this?
Simplast.
No, symplast or symplast. Once in the xylem, the water and minerals are distributed upwards by transpiration from the soil to the aerial parts of the plant. And just note, inside a plant, the apoplast is the space outside the plasma membrane, but within cell wall, within which material can diffuse freely. Yeah, so here, so in vascular plants, water and solutes are able to enter the xylem by way of an apoplast and symplast. And we'll get to this in a bit. So the symplast of a plant is the inner side of the plasma membrane in which water and low molecular weight solutes can freely diffuse. So here is the setups here. So here is the apoplastic and symplastic pathways. So if you have these cells right here, there's a cell wall over there. And then this is the vacuoles, just a big blob opening. I mean, a big blob cavity-filled fluid, etc. Fluid-filled cavity inside the cell, and now you have the cytoplasm is all the stuff outside here. And this pathway here is the plasmodesma, is this opening there. And then what you have is, you have two setups here. So that cell wall is over there. The apoplastic pathway is through the cell wall, so that you can have fluid and solutes going across that. But then this symplastic pathway is through the cytoplasm, so it goes inwards like that. And let's take a look at that definition here. So apoplasm is a space outside the plasma membrane, but within cell wall, which can freely. So the cell membrane is right here. So it's outside of it, but within the cell wall. So it's between. So it's basically essentially through the cell wall there, or that region there. Yeah. So it's essentially within the cell wall. Within material can diffuse freely, and the symplastic is the inner side of the plasma membrane in which water and low molecular solutes can diffuse freely. So it's within the cell membrane. So it's essentially it's a cytoplasm, which is all the stuff inside the cell membrane, outside the nucleus. And here I just quickly teleported back to the part where we went over the cytoplasm. So the protoplasm here, so the cell membrane here, so protoplasm is everything inside, and the cytoplasm is over here, and that's outside of the nucleoplasm is the stuff inside the nucleus. This is outside of it. So cytoplasm, everything including this included in the cell membrane except the nucleus, and contains cytosol and organelles. So that is the cytoplasm there, and there's a nucleus separate over there. So it's very interesting. All right, so we are back now. So yes, the cytoplasm over there. And let's continue further. So this is by transpiration. So once inside the xylem, the water and minerals are distributed upward by transpiration from the soil to the aerial parts of the plant. So it can go upwards via transpiration. Transpiration is a process of water movement through a plant and its evaporation from aerial parts such as leaves, stems, and flowers. Water is necessary for plants, but only a small amount of water taken up by the roots is used for growth and metabolism. The remaining 97 to 99.5% is lost by transpiration and guttation. Very interesting.
Guttation.
So most of the water is not even used for its growth, which is very interesting. Yeah, growth or metabolism, but again, it could be used for structure / just temperature control, etc. So guttation, see that again?
Guttation.
Yeah, guttation is the exudation. Let's see this.
Exudation.
Yeah, exudation of drops of xylem sap on the tips or edges of leaves of some vascular plants, such as grasses, and a number of fungi. Guttation is not to be confused with dew, which condenses, which is phase change from gas to liquid, from the atmosphere onto the plant surface. Guttation generally happens during the nighttime, An exudate is a fluid emitted by an organism through pores or a wound, a process known as exuding or exudation. Exudate is derived from exude, to ooze, from the Latin excudere, or to ooze out or sweat. And ex is out, and sudere is to sweat, yes. Yeah, so what we have is guttation is the exudation or the oozing out of drops of xylem sap on the tips or edges of leaves. So you have it set up here. So guttation of a strawberry leaf, and that sap is that fluid inside the xylem. So you have it exuding out of there. Very, very interesting setup there. So yes, not to be confused with dew, which is the gas to liquid condensing. Yeah, usually at nighttime when it's a bit cold, and then the atmosphere just, once the vapor touches the object, it might freeze up quickly from going from gas to liquid. Very interesting. All right, so let's take a look at this. So in contrast, the phloem, another vascular tissue, distributes carbohydrates, e.g. sugar, and other solutes such as hormones by translocation from a source, e.g. mature leaf or root, in which they were produced, to a sink, e.g. root, flower, or developing fruit. Yes, basically it transfers from a source where it's getting it from, such a mature leaf or root, and then moves it over to the sink. Could even be the root, flower, or developing fruit, etc., in which they will be used and stored. Sources and sinks can switch roles depending on the amount of carbohydrates accumulated or mobilized for the nourishment of other organs. So here's a process of translocation within the phloem. All right, so let's take a look at this right here, and we could even just do a zoom in here. So you got step one here, loading sucrose into the phloem. So you have sucrose inside here, and then there's also the companion cell there. There's the sieve tube member set up over here. Yeah, slash sieve cell. So it goes inwards in there. So for example, leaf cell could be the source. And so we have the phloem, transports products of photosynthesis, sugar, i.e. sugar or carbohydrates, through translocation. You have sucrose in there, it gets transported in here via the companion cell, and then brings it inside the sieve tube. And what you have is, actually it's over here, that's step one. You also have step two here, which is the xylem, that vessel for usually transporting water. So we have transpiration, the water going upwards, and then this water also flows into the phloem. That's number two. And now we have number three there with the sugar there goes inside. And now we have translocation of sugar. Sugar goes down this. And this concentration gradient, water flows down the concentration gradient and into the phloem. Yeah, so this goes down here. This is higher concentration of water into the lower one here. So then water flows down a concentration gradient into the phloem, which increases the water pressure. When water leaves the phloem, the pressure decreases and moves down the concentration gradient. Yeah, so this high pressure here goes in here, this pressure increases, and then you have a scenario where this water moves back into the xylem by osmosis, because the higher pressure will be here and moves over here. And in that process, you also have the sugar being translocated or moved downwards through this setup. And then you have another companion cell, and then you have high concentration here, pushes this over here, and the companion cell on this side takes this sugar and moves it to the root cell. The root cell or sink, etc., unloading sucrose from the phloem into the sink. Could be the roots, it could be the flowers or fruits for development, etc. So it's very, very interesting.